Well, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and thank you so much for joining me on the Friday Masterclass, where today we are continuing on timeline and editing techniques, taking it to the slightly more advanced level today, picking up where we left off last week, and just kind of continuing this trend of deep diving into some of the slightly more hidden, sometimes esoteric, or just sometimes unknown, super cool little features hidden inside of context menus that you might find inside of Premiere Pro. As always, we're coming to you live across YouTube, Behance, Twitter, and LinkedIn today. So thank you so much for joining. And an additional thank you to all of our friends watching us over on the No Film School YouTube channel. A couple of quick shout outs to everybody. Oh, Rogelio Victoria from Mexico. Great to see you. Chin Verhoeven, good afternoon. Nice to see you. Citrus Trail, great to see you as well. Young Kenny J, thank you so much. Theo, Oliver Andrews, Reverb Mike, Tim, of course, great to see you. Lots of stuff to cover today, and I must admit, I'm feeling like half speed today, which is appropriate because we're going to be sort of deep diving into time remapping and how to do that in a multitude of ways inside of Premiere Pro. If you've been watching this series or any of these live streams, you know that there's always multiple ways to perform common actions in Premiere and After Effects and Photoshop, and today's sort of class is no exception to that. So I see you've got Yag from Qatar. Oh, wow, hello. Harsh Pagi from India, great to see you. Okay, Bruce Gonzalez, what's happening? Steve Kosaboom, great to see you. As always, Dhruv Patel, hi. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and I'm going to switch over my screen. We will cut over today, and here we are. So just kind of picking up from last week, maybe I'll start with this. I was showing you a whole bunch of this footage, you may recall, and I was talking about, this was from Tim's seen this because I think I started doing this back in 2016. Never finished. But this is some of the footage from this tech documentary that I was creating called, it was 1981, Analog versus Digital. And in the world of not only video games, but in particular synthesizers, there was a really dramatic shift it's really starting between like 81 and 83, where you saw kind of the last era of the analog giants and the ushering in of this new era of digital giants. And I really focused around a couple of different keyboards. Only like 3 different devices are featured in this little trailer here. I had about 6 or 7, but it was kind of the story around this all. In any case, I thought I would just showcase a little bit of this to you. I don't want to play the whole thing. It's a minute and 4 seconds. That seems way too long. But this kind of implemented some cool little things that we'll get to a little bit later. And I've already scheduled all of our the next month's worth of streams. We're going to be bringing on lots of guests who are going to deep dive into different types of episodic editing, best practices for working with multicam, share and review more stuff. You may know that last week we had the NAB conference in Vegas, so highlighting some of the new features released in Premiere Pro, as well as this new review panel. We now have native Frame.io review right inside of Premiere. You don't have to install the plugin that you once used to have to anymore. In any case, just going to wind back a little bit of this. And very quickly here, I'm just going to turn off the noise reduction because this is in stereo. So I would like you to hear it in stereo. Heck, I'll just play the whole thing. It's not particularly great. Also, I want to point something out, and I think I left the audition session open. I did. So this is so funny. So, we always talk about naming conventions and everything. And I was trying to find the most recently updated version of this edit. And all I could find was somewhere around 2017, I just stopped working on it. And yeah, we move on to other things. But as I was going through it, I found this one, and this is kind of my, so 1981, that was the name of it. The Short, that was this particular piece of it. And then this is like version 8D. And as I was looking through my folder structure, there's 8A, 8B, 8C, 8D, and that had 08DT. So I'm not even sure what that is, but unlike people who do the underscore final, I know better. I still do it. That's just the way it is. So anyway, all right, without further ado, and also what I was going to point out, so I won't play this in Audition, but if I pull up the video panel here, this is being dynamically linked into Audition. So it's a different cut. So there's a different grade, which you'll notice when I play this back for you, on the footage. So this one looks slightly more overall graded. The one that I'm going to show you in Premiere is not, and it's completely different. So again, I couldn't find the one. It doesn't matter. So you'll see a mix of graded and ungraded here. Let's actually go, let's go full screen on this. And I'm going to take myself out and play it back for you. Hold on a second. Is that really super quiet? Yeah, probably because I don't have any limiting. Oh yeah, it's a super quiet mix. Okay, let's do a couple of things here. We're gonna get into this. We're gonna change some things here. So let's normalize this. Yeah, we're at -16. That would explain that. Okay, let's do -3. Actually, I'll do -4. All right. A lot louder. If you just turned up, turn down. Okay. Let's do that again. Let's pretend like everything just always goes as planned from the start. Here we go. So, if anybody remembers that that Casio VL tone, that was I got that. I remember getting that in 1981, and oh man, it was such a great device. Still have it, still works. I did try to take it apart and rebuild it at one point in the early 80s. Don't know why. I was just that kind of kid. Still works despite that. A couple of the LCD slots are sort of not so great. But anyway, in any case, that just kind of showcases, you know, some of the stuff we were talking about last week. I believe next week or the week after, we're going to get into some of these overlays and things. These, of course, were all created in After Effects. You know, this was dynamically linked. This is some earlier versions, some slightly unmodified versions of motion blur. You can kind of see it's not quite as smooth. I'd probably redo that now. But all of this created in After Effects, these little things like this, you know, some of these little light leak transitions, we're going to cover some of that today. Anyway, just kind of fun stuff, weird without all the grading in there. Again, I don't even know which version of it was that this one was, but anyway, kind of fun stuff. Okay, so moving on to where we're going to start today. So we're going to pick up kind of where we left off last week. Just a couple of quick things before we even start. We're going to start with the remix feature. We didn't get to it last week. One other thing I wanted to point out too was just one other keyboard shortcut that I tend to use, which is simply nudging clips. Now, again, I use a mouse for almost everything. I use the keyboard a lot too, but I just, like I said, I don't do a lot of keyboard shortcuts, largely by design. But there's a lot of opportunity to use keyboard shortcuts, and one of the few that I like to use is nudge. And this just allows you to do just that, to nudge one clip or multiple clips up a frame, back a frame, and then there are other keyboard shortcuts that you can assign that will do 5 frames. You know, I think you can even set the amount. But in any case, Command or Control left arrow will nudge you. Oh, sorry, that was right arrow. I know my right from my left, I promise. Command or Control right, Command or Control left, and as mentioned, if you were to select multiple clips, so I'll just go ahead and do that here, and do the same thing, I can nudge multiple clips by that same duration too. That's just one of those fairly useful ones. I'm usually zoomed in super close. Also, this is a button that I don't think, or I should say a toggle that I don't know that I pointed it out. Snapping, so that's what this little magnet, that's what that's called, magnet icon is there. I've always got snapping on for the most part, so clips are snapping together. Remember, we talked about kind of a magnetic timeline. Premiere is not a magnetic timeline by design. Premiere Rush is, but when you have the magnet enabled, snapping enabled, as you approach a clip, it's going to snap together. I always work like that. So because of that, and because when I'm kind of in the zone, remember I talked about, I don't really use the trim editor much. I get right down in there at the frame level and I'm slipping and sliding stuff around. I'm slipping and sliding with the mouse. But occasionally I will go into the nudge keyboard shortcut, Command or Control, left arrow, right arrow, kind of does the job. Very handy. All right, so this is kind of where we left off. We were doing this little rough cut, various things here. This, nothing beautiful at all. But I wanted to talk about Remix, and this is something which is one of the. It's an Adobe AI powered feature. I believe it's Adobe Sensei, which is our native AI. And what it essentially allows you to do is to take any music, right? So this can be, in this case, I'm actually using, I was going to use some of my own, but the one that you just heard was something I recorded. That's actually was a cover of an old Runaways song called Queens of Noise, which Tim may remember. I want to see it in the chat, Tim. We actually solicited users or viewers on Twitch. That's how long ago I think this was. Was it Twitch? I think it was. I think we were still streaming on Twitch back then. And I had them sing the chorus. So there's a version with a bunch of Twitch viewers singing along with me. Kind of fun. This is an audio clip that I just downloaded in preview form via Adobe Stock. And, this kind of represents a common, I don't say problem, but a common thing that we encounter, all right? Where the music that I have is, in this case, about, 6-7 seconds too short. Now, as mentioned, my first recommendation would be, if it's too short, edit it. It behooves you to learn how to edit audio, how to identify where the beat is, how to look at a waveform. This is another great use of the source monitor. So I double clicked on the audio file in the timeline. I'm now in the source monitor up here. And, as I'm looking at this, particularly when I'm zoomed in, you can really start to see and identify where the attacks of the beat are. Now, this happens to be electronic music, so it's sort of impossible not to see where the beat is. And if you're kind of wondering, where is the downbeat? I mean, you can typically kind of look for the largest transient peak in the waveform, and that might be a decent cut point. Not always the case, but I encourage you to experiment with audio editing. That said, there are times, even for me, where I just don't feel like it, and I just would rather have AI do it for me. In step Remix. So what Remix will do is basically in the same way that we're using all the various editing tools last week, right? I can simply drag out the audio to and snap it to the edge of a clip, and it will dynamically, one, analyze it, identify the best places to edit, well, what it thinks are the best places to edit, it's an AI engine, and do the editing for you. And much of the time, it's one, the edits are largely very seamless, and two, effortless and done in a matter of seconds versus, you trying to find the beat, trying to identify, maybe having to add a crossfade. We're going to talk about transitions and crossfades later. It's just a great way to kind of do it quickly and get started. And if it's something that's sort of in the background where it's really underscore, it's not the main focus. So even if the edit were not so great, or maybe musically it's good, but musically it's not quite as harmonic or something that you want, then this is really ideal, okay? And I liken this to something like content-aware fill. If you've ever used content-aware fill in Photoshop or in After Effects for that matter, usually when you're sort of not expecting results, it will blow your mind, right? It can do amazing things. And then sometimes, no. That's that's just how it is. So let's put it to task. So as mentioned, we're gonna go over to our tools panel over here. All right, let me just kind of move so you can see. So under the tools panel where we have ripple, rolling, and rate, the final one here is the Remix tool. Now what I love about this is going to actually bring you into the Essential Sound panel, but rather than going into Essential Sound, there was a longer workflow to get Remix working before. The tool itself makes it super easy. So I'm just going to come over here, and as mentioned, I'm just now going to drag, and you'll see, the edge of my audio and snap it to the end of that last clip and let go. When I do that, you may have seen just very quickly, it analyzes, it figures out what it needs to do, all right? It didn't seem to want to stretch that out longer. There we go. Did I not let go of it properly? It doesn't really like that. Give it a little bit more there, okay? I'll talk about that in a second and why. But in any case, once you do that, it reconfigures. And you can see there's sort of, I guess, based on this musical style, there's some kind of fade out here. And if we take a look, let me click away from this, you'll see that right now there's this one little wiggly, squiggly line. This represents the edit point. Now, this is where getting into the settings of this can be pretty cool. So in Premiere, now this just got added just a few months ago. It's been in Audition forever, and we are going to go back to Audition just to kind of talk about this. You have basically two options here, all right? You have segments, fewer or more, and then variations. All right, so if we choose, right now there's only one edited segment. So actually, let's go ahead and listen and hear what that sounds like. Here, I'm going to just dock this over here for a second. I'm not going to play the whole thing, just a little bit. The edit point is coming up. Okay? Perfect edit. Remix AI. Okay, now, you're already going, but it didn't end right at the end of the video. Okay. Now look, when it's trying to maintain beat and tempo and beat structure, and you actually see this, it tells you this in the Audition UI. I'm sorry. Oh, it does tell you here. So, plus or minus 5 seconds. If you're trying to maintain musicality, there may be a little bleed over, which in this case amounts to, roughly about 3 seconds. Okay, now you could manually go in and cut out 3 seconds so it ends exactly on that beat. Again, stylistically, this kind of has a little bit of a fade out. It would have been weird if the fade out started earlier, but again, this is where you can play around. So let's say we want more segments. I'm just gonna drag this all the way up and we'll see what it does. It did nothing. All right, let's see what happens if we try some different variations and then adjust the segments. Nothing. It wants nothing. It wants nothing to do with me. What about variations? Still nothing. What? Let's try a different target duration. What? What's happening? It's working great. Let's keep going. More segments. Perfect. Okay. Let's try and drag this again. Let's see what happens here. Let's see if we just, it's like not kicking in. It only wants one. Ay vey. All right, let me play this and let's take a listen. Good edit. I guess this is interesting and it would figure. By the way, I always do this live for you. I don't test these out ahead of time. That's real. Here's the thing. Musically, this has and then there's this not a lot of variation. So the AI is saying, not a lot of, and then the actual beat comes in. Not a lot of variation. So for whatever reason, this isn't seeing a great amount of variation here, which is very odd. Now, if I were to drag this out more, you're going to see more edits. We're also, keep in mind, we're only still under 30 seconds. So if I were to play this back again, very good edit. I mean, the edits are great. I gotta be honest. So some of it's going to be sort of dependent on the style. Now, as it turns out, I happen to bring in another piece of audio here. Or I did. I thought I did. All right, let me go ahead and import it from the desktop. All right, so this is that Queens of Noise mix. Let's go ahead and drag this down. Okay, now this Perfect example, this one's way too long, right? So, no idea what this is going to sound like, but let's do the same thing. So we're taking it from a minute down to 25-ish seconds. Clip analysis. 3 edits. Just hear what they sound like. Good edit. Okay, so this edit right here, not great, but this one right here, really good. All right, and now, let's say if I do fewer segments, finally, okay. And notice what just happened. Because now it's using fewer segments, it also shrunk the duration. So now it actually ends sort of right at the end of the clip. And now there's only one edit here. All right. This is what I'm talking about. All right. It's AI. It doesn't really understand, awesome. It just understands that it needs to try and fit something to a particular duration. So this was great. That actually worked out beautifully. Now look, I added a couple more segments. It elongated the audio ever so slightly. What happens if I add way more segments? It elongated it even slightly more. Now let's see what happens if I do variational changes. You can see that it's dynamically adjusting. Now, by the way, I'm going to point this out. I'm try and be fair about this. So this used to be timbre and harmonic. Now it says melodic and harmonic. You tell me how it's varying the melodic edit over the harmonic edit. I've yet to see how that affects either of those particular things. Audition does have an option, which I'll show you in a second, that does allow you to control the edits based on the meter. So in this case, this is like a 4/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2. And you can say, I want an edit that is no less than 8 beats duration or 16 beats duration. So that makes sense, right? Because you're sort of timing it against listening. So in any case, let's see if we play this back. Let's hear what this sounds like with all these. Now we've got like 5 edits in here. Now right there, those were 2 super good edits. Yeah, impressive. That one was pretty good too. Yeah. My drumming helps. Now that one, good edit, but now that was actually great because it ended on a downbeat. It kind of just, right, the downbeat happened to be where it went to black. So this is what I'm saying. It's AI, right? It doesn't really, I see someone quoted me there. It doesn't understand awesome, Mick Garrison. Yeah, it doesn't, okay? Lord help us when it does. I don't want to know what an AI bot thinks is awesome. We will likely not agree. But the point is, if you're stuck, if you're in a bind, if you're, you don't have a lot of time, or you just want to experiment, it can do amazing things. It really can. Now, just taking this one step further, I'm going to show you this over here, just for comparison's sake. Let me import that same mix into here, just real quickly, from the desktop. All right, here we go, and I'm just going to stick this. Stick this on a track here. There's all kinds of effects and things. I'm going to disable all of this. Whoops. Let's unmute. Let's solo. Let's turn off all of this. Oh, and it's panned as well. Let me turn off all that. Okay. When we bring in the Essential Sound panel in Audition, and we assign, so by the way, this is the previous method. So you would click on the audio file, you would choose music, and then once you did that, you would go into the duration section, turn on duration, and then go into remix. It then analyzes, and it does it quickly, all right? And then it allows the remix to happen. And where do you have your options? They're not in the remix panel, they're in the properties panel. All right, so here's the properties panel, and you'll see that right away you have a couple more options on the Audition side. Now, notice what it still says. Okay. Now that's melodic on the Premiere side. I'm not sold on this. It does change the edit. I'm not sold on that it has anything to do with melodic or harmonic. Fight me. But you can see you have minimum loop, 8 beats. The key feature, though, is this, maximum slack. That's how much might we have at the end in case we need it, based on the minimum loop duration of the pulse. If you're going, what did he just say? Yeah, that's for music nerds. Maybe that's why we didn't put it on the Premiere side. I think this is very valuable. So if you want to see this, tell us. Tell us in the Premiere beta. You can leave comments and things. Tell Adobe. I think these are very, very useful. All right. But in any case, that's essentially the difference there. All right. Now, there is actually one other particular difference. So let's say that I want this to be, we'll just make this, I'm gonna do, are we in bars and beats here? We are. Fine. I'm gonna just double the length of this. All right. All right, I'll make it some fractional amount because doubling would be too easy. And let's add more segments. Okay. Here's something that you don't have on the Premiere side, which I would love to see. So once again, you can see the little squiggly lines. These are the edit points, right? Now you might be saying to yourself, that's super cool. I would love, because it's basically figuring out sections that you could theoretically use and edit together elsewhere. In Audition, by the way, you can also send something from Premiere Pro to Audition, including the entire sequence, right? If you want to do it that way. Under the Remix menu, you'll see that we have an option here to split remixed clip into segments. So what does that do? Well, when you're in Remix, the edits are totally dependent on, in this case, the Properties panel and Essential Sound. You can't otherwise move those without adjusting the sliders. But if you choose Split Remixed Clip into Segments, now it actually turns this into an edited piece of audio with crossfades. So again, as we zoom in here, and we can take a listen. I don't know how these edits sound, but let's give it a shot. I'm gonna just close this for a second. Let's take a listen here. Not bad. All right, this one, let's see this edit. Good, this one. Good, all right. So you're going, okay, big deal. What did it do? Well, these are now, oh, sorry, it's grouped. We have to ungroup it, by the way. So let's ungroup the clips. It does that by design so that it moves all together. If you ungroup this, now each of these segments becomes their own little piece, which means that one, I can, further readjust. If you're taking a look at what's happening there, I can readjust any kind of crossfades. But now you have little sections that I can edit and move around. All right. So this is, again, it's just one more nice option to have. Also, it kind of allows you to visually identify edit points in audio for music. All right. So that was probably more than you needed to know about Remix. Once again, it's a fantastic feature. Super happy about it. Anthony Villa, Slack. Love it. Timbre. Is it AI or the T1000? I think it's T1000. I think you're right. What's up, Cody Bear? Sensei, it's a one-edit wonder. You are very funny. Bachik, how are you doing? Chun, I love editing on music. Remix is great when I'm in a hurry. Exactly. Agree. Vincent Schilling, I agree. Yes. What's up, Ashley? Did not know about the nudge. Can tell it will become one of my favorites. Totally. Nice, nice, nice. Yes. Oh, and Gabriel's asking, also the full screen button, a highly must-have for me, could be in the monitor window. Instead, yeah, I mean, you can change and modify all the various windows and panels across multiple monitors. We've been supporting that for quite some time. Very, very good. Okay. Nilesh, what's happening? Okay. Well, a lot of commentary over here. What's up? Okay. All right. So that's Remix. Done talking about it. Check it out. Again, if you want to see more on the Premiere side. Oh, one more thing. I'm not done talking about it. Liar. There's also Stretch. So if you want your audio to be the exact duration, you can choose Stretch. Now, what you may have noticed is when we did Remix down here, right? It doesn't affect pitch. It doesn't affect tempo. It's just recomposing based on edit points, right? If you choose Stretch instead of Remix, now you're working in absolute time. So what does that mean? It means that it's going to speed things up without changing pitch, but because of that, it's going to, or slow it down, depending upon, right? If it's too short, it'll have to slow it down to make it longer. So it's going to affect tempo. So just to like give you an example, let's play this back with Stretch implemented. Right? It's almost twice the speed, right? Because this timeline is about 25 seconds and the duration of that audio was a minute. So to stretch to make all of it fit in 25 seconds, you've got to speed it up. So if you need audio that's exact down to the frame, you can use the stretch option. Unfortunately, though, you really don't have any say. Oh, and you can even see here, it's actually 2.5 times. It's 251%. So, you know, there can be times. In fact, I actually, my youngest, who, you know, I've featured on here before, who edits videos, he loves that because, you know, kids, it's funny to them to hear that, you know, to hear that song sped up 1.5 times. Particularly, he does like plush videos I mentioned. So it's just funny seeing, you know, plush characters with sped up music. It's just funny. Practically speaking, you don't want to do a 251% stretch, right? It can be really great, though, if it's like, oh, I just need 2 seconds, right? And that's usually the case. A friend of mine long ago when we first introduced this feature, credit roll. Credit roll was 4.5 minutes. The composer composed something. It was 4:21 or something. So they had like 8 or 9 seconds that they needed to make up. Implemented stretch. It was great. Now, it slowed it down a little, whatever that percentage is, right? It's not much because we're talking 4 minutes plus, but it was like an effortless change. He didn't have to go in and go, okay, I can loop this one section of, you know, of the chorus or whatever. It was just an easy way to do it. So there are occasions where you'd want to use stretch, right? But those are largely going to be considerations based on how long that original music is. You just have to think about it. It's great. It works really well. Love it. Okay. Moving on to time remapping. Okay. So what is time remapping? Well, essentially, we're talking, you know, slowing things up, slowing things down, speeding things up. Who just said that they were dyslexic? Oh, Vincent. I think I've never been diagnosed, but I definitely reverse things all the time. All right. So a couple things to keep in mind with slow motion in particular, right? We kind of get the hyperlapse concept, you know, shoot lots of frames over time and then compress them into a duration so everything is super fast, right? You've seen that. We used to do that for a lot of our live shows. We'd film over 3 hours of people, you know, coming in, sitting down, watching the show, then leaving, and then we'd say, here's what our show looked like, and we'd compress it down to 30 seconds, and you'd see little chess pieces moving in and out. 2 things to consider. So today, even our phones shoot at higher frame rates. So if you want really good looking slow motion, and I know we've got some star editors, Ashley Lynch among them here, probably tell you, you know, yes, there's tricks you can do. You know, if you're shooting 24 frame, there are some things you can do if you want to slow it down to make it look okay. But if you really want fluid, beautiful slow motion, the most effortless way to do that is to shoot at higher frame rates, right? So your phone, iPhone, Android phone, probably at a minimum shoots 60 frames per second. quite possibly 120. And again, iPhone 13, you've got 240 frames. I think it even does that now at 4K. I don't remember. I really don't use that much anymore. I'm not making that kind of video. It's fun, you know. I do it with my kids. Let's throw water. Water's fun, you know. Got a little waterfall out back. They love to film a waterfall and then slow it down. So it behooves you to have more frames, right? If you don't, you can still use slow motion time remapping, but keep in mind that it may or may not look quite as smooth. Now, last week we talked about some of the speed, duration, interpolation options: frame blending, frame sampling, and optical flow. Each one of those will produce a different result. And based on the type of media that you're capturing, one or more of those may give you a better result. Even if you were shooting at 24 and you have to slow it down, it can look pretty good, all right? And optical flow in particular is using a vector-based pixel-to-pixel slow motion technique. This is something that we've had in After Effects for a long time, right? Formerly, I think it was called pixel motion then. So when it's literally redrawing pixels, connecting the dots, it can look great, even if you didn't shoot at high frame rates. But there are going to be some limitations. So let's start with something easy, all right? So I just made a sequence here, and it's important to point out, go into our view mode here, because this would be like my, this is what I'm going to deliver to YouTube or something, right? So this is a 23976, all right. And by the way, you can see all the other content in here. Got two clips here. These were 60 frames. All right, these are 720p. So these were shot on a Canon 7D 1,000 years ago. Then I've got some 120 frame content. I love how you're actually seeing the actual realized frame rate. Even slight variances. I mean, these are all iPhone. You can see this is interpreted as 239.88, 239.89, 240.52. Very interesting. Let's go with the hairdryer one. Or not really the piano one. A hairdryer one. Okay, we'll start here. So I'm going to take this 240 frame per second video and put it inside of my 24 frame timeline. Now, when I do that, this is another one of those really good, not everybody likes error messages and things, but this is a super informative one. The clip does not match the sequence settings. Do you want to change it to match? No, I want to keep the existing settings. Okay, so when I do that, we don't need the sound here. And I go ahead and just play this back. Take a sip of coffee here. Actually, I'll turn this on for just a second. This is real time. You can see me moving the hairdryer there. Looking at this has got to be a while ago. My hair was so dark. Actually, it doesn't look too different as I look across. I'm not trying to be narcissistic here, but Anyway. All right, so how do we slow this down? This is 240 frames. Okay, as mentioned, lots of ways to do it. Now, last week I showed you, if we go back into our tools panel here, we have the rate stretch tool, right? So this is an easy way, without thinking about it, I can grab the rate stretch tool and I can just drag this out and extend the duration. And it will automatically apply a 46.8% speed adjustment so that when I play this back now, not my best hair day, but it's clearly slow-mo. And the default now is to also have the audio follow the video. And we can do even more of this. We can slow it down even more. All right. Now we're at like 38. Let's go to like 20, 35-ish percent, 31%. Normally with 240, you want about 25. I mean, you can go slower, but about 25% down. Okay, now we can turn off the sound. By the way, that's new too. We used to not have the audio follow the video. I don't remember when we changed that, but that's what it looks like. Now, again, this is not great footage. It's iPhone in the bathroom at 720p. This is actually the iPhone's 6? No, it's got to be the 10. So, it's not fantastic. It's not wonderfully exposed, but it's very smooth, right? It's not jagged. One of the typical artifacts of lower frame rate time remapping or slow motion is you see it moving, right? Like you see the frames trying to be elongated to fit. It doesn't always look great. High frame rate, it's going to look smooth, all right? Now again, the rate stretch tool, it's just sort of an on-off thing. You haven't, there's no ramp, there's no start real time, go into slow-mo, go back into real time, go super fast. That's typically what you want to do. And when you think of film direction or film directors, what was I just watching the other day? Oh, Sherlock Holmes, the first Sherlock Holmes. Not the first Sherlock Holmes, I mean, the newer first Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr. And it's, that's Guy Ritchie, right? So it has a lot of, he's super famous for that, like, fight scenes where it starts out, and right before the punch happens, and Robert Downey Jr. is narrating, first grab neck, and you see his hand go out, and then it slows down, grabs the neck, pull out thorax, back into real time, swipe across the face, wah! Slow, 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 slow. Pow! Back into real time. There's all this slow, fast, slow, fast, slow, fast. First time watchers are going, is he losing his mind? No. You got to think like this when you're doing slow motion. You can't do that with the rate stretch tool. So how would you do that? Okay. First of all, let's just go back. Lots of ways to do time remapping. Let's go back into speed duration here. We're going to go back to just 100%. All right, now remember, we talked about this. This is also where you'll find things like reverse speed, maintain audio pitch, ripple editing, and then your time interpolation methods, okay? So back to normal here. All right. If you want to have ramps, so as we just discussed, you want to do that, start off real time, go into slow-mo, back to real time, super fast, change it over time, you can do that right in the timeline. And you do that by right-click, control-clicking on the effects badge that you see right here, which by default, that white line across the top of your video, right, that's your opacity. You've probably done opacity keyframes, so you can do a fade out right on the clip, right, without doing transitions. This is also where you can do time remapping. And when you go into time remapping speed, right, now it takes the video display away, but now this is going to allow you to effectively draw the curve of how you want to apply the motion, all right? So I'm just gonna keep it zoomed in for a minute so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm gonna hold down the Command key to set a keyframe, all right? And when I do that, right away, you're gonna see that we have these little handles. Now I can pull these handles apart. This can represent the ramp, right? So sometimes, stylistically, maybe you want the speed changes to be immediate. Maybe you want it to gradually go into a slow-mo or gradually go back into a real time. Again, that's an editorial choice. And I'm simply going to drag the line. And as I do that, you'll see, okay, now we're going to 25%. Okay? And if I click on those handles, now I can adjust the smoothness of that ramp, the curvature of that ramp, right? I can also change the duration of that ramp. We have a similar function in Rush. This is a little bit more detailed. I actually like the implementation that we have in Rush a little better, okay? So it starts real time, and here, all right? Starts real time, and then goes into slow, super slow, eyebrows raise. Okay, now, not a lot happening in this scene. I'm gonna hit Command again, set another keyframe. Now let's go into a little bit faster, right? So, and we have no ramp now. Slow, 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 real time, but faster than real time, right? Once again, hit a keyframe. Maybe now we'll do a little bit of a ramp. Drag it down. Okay. Adjust the handle, and so on and so forth. All right, so slow, fast, back into sort of mid, slow, almost real time. Okay, that's one way to do it. Now, if you like working in the timeline, that's wonderful. Remember that this is an effect. You're controlling an effect. if you go up to the Effects Controls panel, you can also do this same function here. And if you twirl down speed, you can adjust the ramps and everything here as well. You can even see it's showing you the velocity, right, over time. So a couple of different ways to implement this in the timeline, all right? Now, when we started, I was talking about setting the timeline to my final output. You don't have to do it that way. This is just typically how I like to work, and I'll manipulate the clip in terms of its speed as needed. You'll notice when we dragged it in, it's playing in real time. Now, what if I wanted it to play, you know, at its super slow duration in my 24 frame timeline? Well, there's another thing that you can do, and this is where we get slightly into the more advanced stuff here, by doing an interpretation, a mode interpretation of the playback. So here we have, I mentioned like, oh, here, maybe this is a good one. The water one isn't as impressive as I thought. This is pouring some water into a cup. That almost looks slow-mo. Why didn't I pour faster? What's wrong with me? You can clearly see that's real time though, all right? So I'm gonna take this, and this is 120 FPS, and we're gonna go into Modify, Interpret Footage. And under Interpret Footage now, we can use the frame rate from the file or assume a frame rate of 24 or 23.976, 2398, okay? Have some pixel aspect ratio options here. Field order, not necessary, it's progressive, all right? Color management, not necessary here, but we can do a color space override. This is very nice. Again, we talked a little bit about this. We're gonna get more into this as time goes on. Click OK on this. And what you may have noticed is right away, the duration of this clip just got a lot longer. Why? Because now it's interpreting this to always play back at in its slow motion method. So now when I take this and I drag it down into the timeline, I have to scroll ahead here, it's automatically playing back slower at 120 FPS. And this is what I'm saying. Why didn't I pour this faster? I mean, it's clearly slower. You can see the bubbles moving slowly. By the way, we can still further time remap this if we so desire. All right, that might require a little bit of rendering in here. Now, this is what I'm talking about. You see how now it's starting to look a little chunky? Like it's obviously slower, but it's not smooth, right? It's because we're effectively slow-mowing on top of something that's already playing back at its slowest native frame rate, all right? Now, this is where you might achieve better results. We're also at 40%. Let's do like 70, all right? By changing the method. So, as I mentioned last week, and it's funny, I'm gonna bring in another example too. I always forget which I prefer of these two. I actually prefer frame sampling over blending, okay? For things like liquid, I've actually found that optical flow sometimes will make that slightly more jagged, stuttery look. It'll actually make it look more fluid. I mean, that is kind of the idea, but let's see how it does. Now, the one thing with optical flow, I probably won't be able to play this back successfully. You notice the timeline just went red. It's because it's gonna want you to render that out. It's a super heavy effect by design. So let's see if we just kind of make this a little small section here. It actually already looks a little better. Let me see how long it'll take to render this. We've only got 7 minutes. Man, time flies. All right. I'm gonna let it do it. I think we can do it. It's saying 30 seconds, just staying at 30 seconds. I liken the estimated time to the same thing I tell my kids when they're like, Dad, when are you going to be done? I'll be done in like a half hour. 95 minutes later, Dad, when are you going to be done? We're hungry. I said a half hour. That was 90 minutes ago. Oh, well, sometimes it works the same, all right? That's a final touch rocks glass? I'm not sure. Okay. What? That's what I'm talking about. Do you see the difference? Do you see how it's now? It is a little stuttery, little. But look at the bubbles. Super smooth. Optical flow, yo. That worked great. You can see my genuine excitement because you just have to try out the options. Now, if we go into frame blending, okay, you're not going to see it on this clip. Let me go into this one here. This is a good frame blend clip. Okay, so this is a little thing that I shot in India again 100 years ago. Hope you don't mind. You know what? Let me just. I'm gonna scale this up, so we're gonna lose a little fidelity on here. Let's go into speed duration. Now this was 60 FPS. We're gonna go to 50%, and let's just do frame blending. And when I do that right away, this is why I don't love frame blending, because especially when you're stopped. Now sometimes you'll see this in motion. You can see the frames overlapping to elongate the duration, right? And it just doesn't look, sometimes it, like, you just have to try it. Some footage it'll work great. Generally speaking, I don't use that one. If we go back and we go into frame sampling, even stopped just right away, right? You're not seeing that. So, and this one, it works a little better. Now, actually that looks great and it's not very stuttery. So it just depends. But I highly recommend checking those out because different methods are going to work better on different types of footage. Now, having said that, we used to have this demo asset of someone like water skiing, and they're doing, I don't know what all these tricks are called, but they're doing these crazy tricks, and there's this like fountains of water shooting everywhere. It looked amazing with frame sampling. When we went into optical flow, because it's sort of drawing pixel to pixel, you had water that started looking like vectorized illustration. So artifacting, which is a byproduct of slowing things down sometimes, was increased in a visual way that wasn't pleasing to the eye because it changed the shot. It looked like we went into After Effects and just drew like weird fake vector water droplets. It just didn't look right. So changing the method looked better, all right? So you just have to play around with it. It's like the Flash, the people vibrating. I missed something in here. Optical flow, yeah. Did I say that? Bruce, did he say yo? Yeah, I mean, I was around when Yo MTV Raps was around, you know? It's in my vernacular. It's just in there. It's good stuff. Optical flow sometimes gets impressive results. Though. Absolutely, Ashley. As you see, like right here, I think on the water, brilliant. Because let's do this now. Let's take that. I'll give you a couple more seconds. All right. Did I change it already? Yeah, I changed it to frame blending. I mean, it's okay on frame blending. If I put it back to optical flow, will it keep the render? It does. It's so much smoother. That's optical flow. Look at the bubbles. It's making me thirsty. Let's go back to frame sample or frame blend or whatever. Neither of those look good. Let's do frame blend. It's stuttery, right? You can hear it, although bubbles don't sound like that, but it feels like I'm running out of. So try out different methods. There's no way I'm getting to all the things I want to talk about today. We're going to tease a little bit of this, and we're going to do more of this next week when we get into telling the story with the edit and more transitions. Just real quickly, talking about transitions. If you're unfamiliar, a transition is a way to move from one clip to another, usually completely different scenes. Let's mute this, right? And without, and there's lots of different ways to transition. You can put footage over top of it, B-roll, so that you don't see like a weird jump cut, especially if it's like documentary style or interview and the person's head shifted and you want to cover that up. Now, we do have something called morph cut, which will smooth motion of head movement. We're going to cover some of this next week. Typically, though, you can also use some of the more standard things like dissolves. And if you go under video transitions, these are some of your most standard. Obviously, the cross dissolve being the most standard here. Oh, and in fact, here, let me just shave some of this up so I can show you a decent cross dissolve. All right, I simply take the clip, drag it over top of the video, like this. God, I have 2 minutes here. All right. And it dissolves between the two. All right. The point I'm going to get to make before we have to go, this will typically, by default, create what's called a symmetrical transition. But sometimes you want to fade the adjacent clip in sooner or fade out the other clip at a different rate. So if you hold down Shift and Command, this will allow you to do an asymmetrical transition, right? So by default, if I grab the handles, it's moving the same side to side. If I hold down Shift and Command or Shift and Control on Windows, I can do asymmetrical transitions, okay? Another common one you often see is like dip to white or dip to black. This was really popular a couple of years ago, especially in like the DSLR boom. So a lot of YouTube videos where you'd have that, you know, flash to white. Typically I'll do that as like one frame, right? Transitions, lots of methods there. We also have Essential Graphics, the Essential Graphics panel, where you can search for graphical transitions. So these can be things like, you know, any one of these that you see here, where you're using some kind of graphical element to just move between your footage, all right? No set standard on how these are meant to look. I don't know why these aren't playing back. They should be. We're going to cover more of this next week, but friends, that's all the time we have. So until then, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the Daily Creative Challenge, and we will see you again next week with more. This was a weird stream today. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.